Yeah, gold. Let's start with gold. All right. Since we haven't looked at it in a while, I was thinking maybe we could start on the weekly and just see how it happened last week. All right. Please don't mind the green and red candles. All right. So we're going to start with gold weekly. We're going to highlight our support. That's too far. Let's highlight last week's low, right? And then we highlight last week's high. And then since it's already breaking, let's highlight where we think it might reach next. I'm thinking if it's going to continue rising, right, it will probably do a weak fill, especially if it's preparing for tomorrow. So if it's going to drop tomorrow, it probably do a weak fill and then drop. But I think those are the most important areas, and maybe possibly if it was to break last week's low, which looks highly unlikely, but let's just say maybe I'll highlight the next low. So just looking from the weekly candles, right? Even the daily candles, I actually noticed yesterday. They all have been showing us a bullish pattern. Now, look at the weekly this way, right? Price made a low here, right? And then it went up, came back to retest, and then it rejected, right? So that was our reversal pattern. And then it did break out, created a high right here, right? And then it retested, even though the candles were not as big as we would want, or let's say the bodies were not as what we would want, it did retest, and we could only expect this week to actually push higher, especially with the fact that it was respecting the low or the last week's low. But that was the weekly analysis. Like if we had looked at it at the weekly time frame, at the beginning of the week, we should have seen that. And then on the daily, that's where it actually gets very interesting. So since we're looking at the daily, we're just going to adjust a few things. I would say we adjust the low, right? And then this low, and then a little bit above, and then this is our target area, which it's already pushing. All right. So if you were looking at gold yesterday, right, this was very, very clear. Price came up, as we all know, right? And then it came down. And remember from our last streams, right? We said if price is rejecting and it's refusing to create a new low, and then it breaks out, right, but then comes back to close back in the range, that should push price higher. We've always talked about that, and that's what price did. It came up, right, and then it created a high, and then we saw price coming all the way to create a low right here, right, and then it rejected the low a couple of times, but then price dipped out, and then it came back to close back in the range. If price had any bearish power, right, this is when it should have closed outside of the range, but price rejected, right? And then the next candle, right, is the one, if price had any bearish pressure left, this candle should have pushed lower, but it did not. It did push lower, but it still came back to close back in the range, which was only showing that price had high chances of going up. And then we had a very nice engulfing candle. We have talked about this engulfing candle a couple of times. We have said if we have an engulfing candle that's, let's say, that's probably around this area, right? Let's say for example this one, it's all right, but it's not as powerful as an engulfing candle that will cover a whole range area. An engulfing candle that's covering a whole range area, right? I will be looking for entries, but then our entries, we had to watch price come back to retest before it pushes higher. And the retest was always there because gold always retests. That's one thing that it always does. I will show you on the 1 hour time frame. And then B, it always follows structure. Most of the time, it follows structure. It might have these candles that wick out, but it does follow structure, and that's what it did. We have price rejecting support, pushes higher, right? Price came back all the way to retest the breakout, and then it pushed higher. So all we had to do was to find an entry on the smaller time frame. That's it. And then if we go, we're not going to add anything actually here, because the zones that we have on the weekly align very much and very nicely with the daily ones, so we'll keep them. We'll go on the 4 hour time frame next. Now on the 4 hour time frame, this is where things get very interesting. This is the range that we have discussed about, right? We've discussed about this range a lot. Now, if you look at this range, right, we have price dipping out at this area, right? It did dip out, and then when it came back to close back in the range, right, we have price creating a smaller range right here. Now, when this smaller range happened, right, if price at any bearish pressure, we can even say the same structure we were looking at as price was consolidating, and then it made the dip out, came back to close back in the range, right? It's the same thing it did around this area. Price was consolidating, it dipped out, came back to close in the range. Now, this was our first confirmation, right? And then price did break out and it pushed all the way high. So this is the engulfing candle. And then we said whenever price breaks out, it retests. So when price broke out here, right, this was the only range that we had after when this whole move happened. This was only our only previous range, right? So we had to anticipate that price will come back and retest this area, and that's what it did. We have the retest, price pushed lower to retest, and it pushed back up. So our retest, our confirmation for the reversal was simply the information. We've talked about it before, right? Besides the information, right, this is where the order block comes in, right? Because if we are looking at the order blocks, we're going to say this was accumulation, right? They grabbed the liquidity, they did their whole accumulation phase, right? And then price came back, right? Came back into our range, and then it started ranging, right? Now a lot of people were entering sales, we all know that, but then price pushed up and then it come back, right? So we have our first liquidity grab, right? And then we have our range. So we needed price to come back, reaches this range. As long as price does not close back in the range, price was going to move up. So we had price coming back to close back in the to close very close to the range as a retest with a very strong bearish candle, right? If price had any bearish pressure, we should have seen price falling from here, because this was a strong bearish candle. Price was saying it has a lot of bearish pressure at this moment, but you notice that price came back, it created a new high right here, right? And then with a very strong bearish candle right here, if price had any bearish pressure left, this is where price should have fallen, but it did not. So our confirmation candle would have been this well, it is an engulfing candle, but yeah, this was our confirmation candle. So from here, even if you had missed the retest, our confirmation candle should have given you an entry, because when price closed around here, right, you could have entered as price retest in the confirmation candle, right? You can get that retest on the 1 hour time frame. But even if you had missed it, price created a high right here, right? And then it created a low right here. So when this bearish candle closed, that was our support being created. And when the next candle closed above, that was your entry. So even if you had missed that entering when the bearish candle, the bullish candle closed above, right? Price went up and then it even came back to retest. That's what I'm saying. Gold always retest. So even if you see a big move like the one that's happening right here, it will find area of resistance, and it will reject that resistance so that it can come back to retest before it pushes higher. That's why gold is very good when it comes to structure. If you only wait for the retest, you will actually win a lot in the gold market. All right. So now we're on the 1 hour time frame, right? So let's say if you weren't looking at the 4 hour time frame, you're looking at the 1 hour time frame, right? What do we have on the 1 hour time frame? On the 1 hour time frame, I can pretty much tell you that this was a very nice support to look at, right? And then looking back at our range setup, right? Breakout, and then price comes back to close in the range. It's exactly what gold did again. So price was ranging, as you can see, our W formation, price dropped. It did a weak fill, and then we see price coming back to close back inside our range. Now that was our confirmation. So when that confirmation happened, all we had to do was to wait for price to come back and retest structure. So if you had missed buying here, all you had to do was to wait for price to come back and retest structure, right? That's what it did. And it even gave us the confirmation candle that we look for. This is a very strong engulfing candle. It might not be as big, but it's covering all of the down move that happened on or after it hit this high. So it created the high, created 3 tiny candles, and we have 1 candle that's covering all of that bearish move, all of that bearish pressure, right? This is just showing us that there's very weak bearish pressure in the market. Price was most likely going to keep on going higher, and that's what it did. It kept on going higher. So when we all know that this was a strong resistance, right? Price was not going just to break this resistance, right? So instead of people entering here, right, all you had to do was to measure if you need to use fibs, yes, but you should learn to how to use this, how to notice this with your eyes. Because if you are looking at this move, right, this uptrend, right, and you want to look for your retracement, where is gold going to hit next on its retracement, right? If you would use fibs, this would be 50%. Around here should be around 61.8, around somewhere around this area. But 50% normally for gold works very well. So I would say this is our 50%, right? Let's just check for those who think I'm lying. Where are my feet? Oh, here it is. All right. Let's see. Yep, 50%. That's 50%, and this is 61 or 61.8%. I was correct. So yeah, that's 50%, right? So all you had to do was to wait for price to come back and retest, and that's what it did. The same thing again. It created a range. It dipped out as a fake out, came back to close back in the range. All you had to do was to enter here. If you don't want to enter there, all you had to do was to enter 50% of this candle, of the rejection candle, and you would have caught the whole move. So we had a couple of entries this were between yesterday and today, but that was very good. I'm proud of myself. But yes, do you guys have any questions? I'm guessing.
No.
Okay, I'm guessing no for the rest. But yes, if gold reaches, this is our next resistance on our daily time frame. So if you want to trade gold, I would set my sell limits right there. Price will most likely reject this area for it to come back and retest, because it's not going to keep on going higher without retesting. So even if it pushes through this resistance, at some point it will come back and retest. So I would say if you want to catch a very nice retest, right, you would use oh yeah, order blocks. Back on the order blocks, right, we have said order blocks, right, this is an area where the banks or the institutes have placed their orders, and price will most likely come back close to that area or to that area to fill the rest of their orders, because they won't place just a few orders all at once. So I would say, let's say you had this uptrend only, right? The rest of this price hasn't happened yet, so you want to look for your order block so that you can enter and go with the uptrend. So you would have to look at especially areas with this fake out, and especially if it's an area, if it's a week that doesn't have a weak fill, because now this is a week, right, that doesn't have a weak fill. There is no price that is played in this area. So that's a nice area, because it's saying they probably placed their orders, let's say around here or even around here, right, but they do not want price to pass through their orders, so they will keep price above. If price wanted to do a weak fill, it would have done a weak fill anywhere around here before it pushed up. Similar to this area, price wanted to do a weak fill before it pushed higher, and it did do a weak fill. So if you see a wick on a bigger time frame without a wick fill, that's a good area, or there's a good chance that there's an order block right there. So when we're looking at order blocks, right, we're now looking at the last bearish candle before the strong bullish move. So the last bearish candle before the strong bullish move would have been this one. So that's the range of our order block. So some people who highlight, okay, the area of that candle. So when you highlight the area of that candle, right, basically what you're saying you want price to come back into the range of this candle, right, and tap your buy limits if you have them. If you don't, you want to enter the moment price reaches this area, right? And that's what price did. It tapped once and then it rejected, created a new low. It tapped once here, right, rejected, and then it created a new low right here. So all you wanted was for price to respect this low for it to push higher, and that's what price did. Even if it tried breaking here, it came down, tested the order block again. So that means there were orders that were filled here and there were orders that were filled here, and then price pushed higher. So when they had enough sellers in the market, price kept pushing higher. So that's the basic definition of order blocks. You can even look at order blocks. They can be seen on any time frame, so you could highlight it on the 4-hour time frame like this, right? And then when you go on the 1-hour time frame, you can then use that information. That, let's say, if you didn't have buy limits, you're just watching price to keep rejecting this area, and when you finally have your confirmation candle, let's say this would have been our confirmation candle, because this candle, right, it's working with, let's say, the order block 1, right? 2, it's working with how it broke structure but then came back and respected structure. So that's 2 confirmation, and then the breakout would be your final confirmation. Even better with the retest, that's even more confirmations. So that is how order blocks work. So let's say, since this is a 4-hour time frame order block, right, let's say you're looking at the 1-hour time frame and you want to see when was your previous or your last order block. Since you have missed this move, right, where can you get your next order block, right? You're simply looking at structure. We're looking for an area where price range or was in a downtrend. For the best order blocks, price should have been in a strong downtrend, and then it ranges at the bottom. That's the best order block structure. But for someone who's trading the 1-hour time frame, we can't find the strong downtrend. We have to use the structure that we have. So we would say we're looking for the last area that price consolidated, and this is the last area that price consolidated. So now we're saying we want to check or we want the last bearish candle before the bullish move started, right? We would say probably this candle is our last bearish candle before the whole move, right? So we're highlighting this area. So what we are now saying is, instead of us playing with our emotions and feeling all of that fear of missing out, whatnot, all we have to do is to wait. If you don't catch the sell, all you have to do is to wait for price to come back, hit this area for price to push higher. But if you think that you can wait for price to come back, hit this area, retest it, right, for you to enter and then push price higher with you, you can also wait around this area to see if price will create any structure, right, a fake out, and then it will come back to retest. So there are two trades that you can actually look out for here. So if there are two trades that we can look out for here, right, we want a fake out. So now we're saying this is the initial resistance that we want price to reject, right? If that's the initial resistance that we want price to reject, that means everyone else is looking at that resistance. So now we want to see, or we want the next potential area that price could hit before it drops. So we're saying this is the resistance that price is reaching. Okay, but what is our next resistance that price could hit before it drops? That is this one. It has to be a resistance that's very, very close, not too far, very close. This one, there is some distance. I don't like this one that much, but it is a little bit close. So we're saying we want price to start consolidating around this area, right? And if it hits this area, let's say let's actually do this. We want to go on the 1 hour time frame, right? Let's Okay, this is the 1 hour time frame, right? So looking at the 1 hour time frame, right, this is a little bit too far for price for us to say this is our next resistance. Price has to fake out before it drops. If price is going to reach this area, it has to be a proper move up. So we want something to happen around this area. We want a rejection to happen around this area, right? Let's say if possibly price could reject this area, right? We want a fake out just a tiny bit, let's say 10 pips, 20, since it's got 20 pips, and then want price to come back and close back in the range. The moment it closes back in the range, that tells you that there are high chances price is going to push down to retest for it to push higher back to our next resistance. But let's say price doesn't do that, right? And then price doesn't reject this area. Let's say possibly it breaks out and then it just makes one bearish candle and then it pushes higher. That's also okay. So when it does that, right, now all you're doing is now you're waiting for the same setup to happen, but only at a different level, because that was on the 1 hour time frame. Now this would be, let's say we're now waiting for price to consolidate around this area for it to come back and retest. Because now if you're looking at the support and resistance and trends, right, you want price to break two resistances for the trend to change. So for the first resistance, that would be this one, right? That's where price is at. The second resistance is not that far, but this is the second resistance, right? The moment price breaks this resistance, that means the trend has changed. But for it to break this resistance, price has to retest this area. The reason why I'm saying it has to retest this area, right, why I'm stressing on retesting that area, right, is if price wanted to go higher, right, it would have not ranged for this long. Now this is, we can even say weeks. It ranged around that area for weeks, 2 weeks, but yeah, it's very long. So price has to retest that. Okay, since it's only 2 weeks, I'm still going to express that it needs to retest this area, because the thing with ranges, right, the longer or the tighter the range is, the higher chances that it will retest. If it's a range that has only 3 candles, right, those are ranges that we can expect maybe just a 1 hour retest and not see a retest on the 4 hour time frame. But if it's a range that's even showing on the daily time frame and the weekly time frame, it's most likely going to be retested before price pushes higher. It's the same It's the same thing with this area. You can see this area, we had a range, right? That's the whole reason why we have this range. It's because of this range. Price broke out, right? But price couldn't just go without retesting this range. That's why we have this candle retesting. That was our retest candle. So when that candle retested, right, that was telling us that the first step is done. So all prices to the next second step was to make sure that price breaks out of this area, and that's what it did. So we can expect the same thing to happen around this area, especially having NFP tomorrow. So considering that we have NFP tomorrow, there are high chances that price could retest. But if anything happen, anything could happen, and we can just see price keep on going higher. But the higher it goes, it will still come back to retest. So wherever it hits, its next resistance, it will come back to retest at some point. But yes, that's the important stuff on gold. So even if you want to look at order blocks, right, look at this area. If we're saying we are coming on the chart right now, right, and this is what has happened, we want to see where is our next order block, right? I would say this is our strong bullish trend, right? What was our last bearish candle before the bullish trend started? This one. And that is where we are expecting price to come back and retest. So it all aligns up, it all adds up. All you need is for price to come back and retest, but not close back in the range. If it closes back in the range, right, I would suggest to watch price to not close below this low. So price could dip back in the range, right? But it should not close this below this low, because if it closes below this low, then that's two supports that has been broken. So that tells us that price has higher chances of reaching the base of the range. So these principles, you can use them anyway. Any questions? No questions? Okay. Let's look at USD card. You guys really don't have any questions?
No, I don't have any. Thank you.
All right.
No, Queen.
Or should we look at pound USD for you?
Yes, please. And Euro USD.
Okay, Euro USD and pound USD. All right, Euro USD. Ooh, that was a lot. All right, Euro USD. We have. I'm starting on the 4-hour time frame. We have resistance right here, right, and then we have support right there. I would say we have our next resistance right here, and we have our next support right here. Oh, that is some nice.
Can I ask something?
Yes, sure.
So since when we were doing the analysis, it looked like gold is gonna be a buy. Does it, since it correlates with euro dollar, does that also apply to euro dollar, or can it sometimes differ?
It can actually differ, because now if we're looking at gold going up right now, we will have to figure out what's making gold go up. But sometimes it's because there is no pressure in USD, sometimes it's yen, sometimes it's odd, sometimes it's CAD. So it all depends on what's making it move.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I say it's better to trade each pair according to the structure that it has, because sometimes they will move differently, just because there are two different things that are moving each pair.
Okay, I understand. Thank
So
you.
if we're looking at Euro USD now, right, it has very nice structure on the 4-hour time frame. But for going on the 1-hour time frame, right, I would say my first notice, right, would be, you see how price is started with strong bullish candles, right? But then when it created support here, of course, it had to come back and reach this area, right? But you can see how the candles are now losing bearish pressure. I mean, the bullish pressure, they are no longer as strong as they were when the trend started. So that tells us that the trend is about to end. So I would say its first resistance was this one, right? Of course, it rejected this resistance, right? But everyone is expecting it to reject that area. And this is the last area that price needs to break for it to be in a bullish trend. So that area, it's not going to break it just like that. I would say price needs to come back and retest. Sorry about that. I would say price needs to come back and retest, let's say, this area, or even this area, or even like price come back and retest this area if it is going to break this resistance. But if it does break, right, then look at that action as, you know how before NFP or any strong news, price is always moved into a different direction. So if we are seeing this bullishness, can I call you back? Hello? Okay. All right. If we're looking at this bullishness, right, we can say, yes, it might be bullish right now, but price could also push a little bit higher. I would say if it does break this area, if it does break, I would say price will come back, will maybe wick out to this area. And if it does come back in the range, price is higher chances of coming back all the way down here, especially to this area, because we have an order block right here. The last bearish candle, that's our order block, that's its retest. As long as it does not get back into this area, it will push higher. But this bullishness, right, has been going for far too long. So now I would be looking for selling structure right here, maybe to give us a range, a fake out, and then price could drop to retest. And if tomorrow USD news comes out weak, we might see in the morning price dropping, and then during news price pushes higher. But if price does not drop, we might see price push higher before news. If you see price pushing higher before news, high chances that price is going to drop during news. So if you don't see anything that's clear before news, right, it's better to wait for 15 minutes after news, and then you can enter, because you can have something that you are seeing, but then price does not do it in the first 15 minutes. It will do it in the next minutes that are coming. Hello, babe. But yes, but I would say, Jesus, sorry guys. Hello. Yes, I'm doing a stream right now. Yes, I'm doing a stream right now. I'm having a stream right now. Okay. Sorry, guys. But yes, if price comes back and closes, let's say price doesn't give you the structure that we want at this area, right? At this area, if price comes back and closes below here, you can see it come back to retest. But that won't be that much of a good entry unless if you're okay with it. But I would expect price to come back to retest this high. I would even set sell limits around this area for price to push lower.
Yeah, I actually had a sell limit at 1.20 719.
Yeah, I would also have a sell limit around that area. I would also have a sell limit around that area.
Okay.
Because you can even see right now it no longer has that strong bullish pressure that it had. So all we need to do is to wait for it to just push a little bit higher. But if it doesn't push higher and comes back and closes, especially around this area, this low, then that means price is high chances of falling, because that low, right? You see, we have the first week that was retesting this resistance that was created, right? And then the next candle also came back to retest before it pushed higher. So if we have a bearish candle that closes in the wicks, especially right at this low, that can push price lower. Because now it's saying price no longer has as much bullish pressure for it to continue pushing higher. There isn't any reason for it to come back to support. It has to push higher. But if it continues to come back to support, then it's going to break at some point. And then pound USD. Ooh, that is beautiful. Pound USD. This one has also been consolidating for quite some time now. We like it when they consolidate, only if we can catch the breakout. All right, we have a high, we have a low, we have a low, and we have resistance prices rejected for as long as we know. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the 1 hour time frame, and then we're just going to adjust this resistance. Ooh. The sell limit there. All right. Now, this is what we have on pound USD. I would also put this low that price broke out from, because remember what it breaks, it has to retest. So all we need is for this candle to close bearish. If this candle closes the way it's looking right now, where it's only 11 minutes into the hour. Well, okay, since it's only 11 minutes into the hour, right, I would go into the 30-minute time frame and then watch for price to retest this area for it to push lower. But we need a candle, let's say even a 50-minute candle, but 30 minutes best, to close somewhere down here like this below, and then you can watch price to come back and retest this